consensus is the way you make government laws. Although they say that the fewer laws, the better. The I really don't know why it died, other than that there really wasn't a desire to perpetuate that form of education. It exists now in the form of the free schools. For example, there's a free school down in Albany, the Albany Free School,
Yeah,
that you know
yes.
about, and I participate with them every now and then because I believe it's a good idea.
So you can still consider yourself to be an anarchist or a libertarian?
Yeah, I think so. I never was an anarchist. And one thing about this school is they did not proselytize. They did not say you had to be a communist or an anarchist or anything else. The children were left out of the politics. So I never knew about, I didn't even really know what an anarchist was until they started having reunions at the school. And I went to the reunions. They're really annual meetings devoted to the idea of the school. Every fall we have a meeting, and I now organize the meetings. Most of the children that went to the school are getting into their 80s and 90s. When the school had as many as 60 or 70 students, and that was in the 1920s when the biggest enrollments occurred. When I was there were only about 12 in the early 1940s. So I forgot where we were.
Well, I guess I was going to ask you, you left the school at age 14. The school continued on for some years afterward. What did you do after you left the school? Did you attend a public high school?
Yeah, almost all of the students went right into high school. I went right into ninth grade. My family decided we still owned the land up in New York, Columbia County, so we moved back there into not the same hut, but into another house that we bought, that my uncle had built on our land, as a matter of fact. We were just loaning him the land. And so we bought that house from them, my uncle and aunt, and lived there for my 4 years of high school, and when I went to college. So I went to a central school, Rolf Jansen Central School in Hillsdale, New York, for 4 years. My class size was 32 because there was low birth rates in the Depression years, which was 1932 when I was born. So I had a low cohort in the low point of the population, so to speak, occurred at that time. And then I went to Cornell University at the College of Agriculture for 4 years. I majored in biochemistry. At Rolf Jansen, I was the president of the meteorology club, but at Cornell they didn't have a meteorology program, and I couldn't afford to go to a school outside of New York. I'd always been interested in meteorology as a subject. I took the one course that they did have in the ag school, but my degree was in biochemistry. From there, I went for 3 years in the Air Force, and then I went back to graduate school later on.
You joined the Air Force voluntarily?
Yes, despite the fact that my parents were pacifists.
We were just interrupted by a visitor to the office, and we decided that, resuming the conversation, Dr. Scott, I wanted to ask you what it was like to change from a school that was so free to a public school when you were 14.
Well, needless to say, I was quite frightened because I'd never taken an exam. I had never been in a formal classroom setting at all, where everybody sits down in rows. I didn't know how to write very well, script, because I'd never learned that. So I panicked, and I asked my mother, I said, gee, I'm not going to be able to write anything yet. What am I going to do? So she gave me a book and sat me down and said, well, learn how to do script. And of course I did that in a couple of weeks. It didn't take too long. My first impression of the school was the nastiness of the students. It was a very competitive situation, needless to say, as all of our schools are. And people were always picking on other people. At the school in the modern school, we never did that. Everybody was friends with everybody. You know, it wasn't a competitive situation. There was competition. There was baseball and everything, but we didn't care who won. We played baseball for the enjoyment. That was the idea of the school, you know. But this setting, the thing that I remember most is the students were angry. And the second thing I noticed is that they were not at all interested in school. I could not figure out why. I was very interested. I had these 5 or 6 courses that I was taking. I was taking Spanish, algebra, you know, history, English, and the usual. We'll just let that run.
Okay. So how did you feel about getting grades now?
Well, the first exam, needless to say, I was panicked. They had a weekly quiz in the algebra. It was one of my classes. And needless to say, I got 100 on that test. And because I was studied very, you know, and none of the students studied. I was probably the only one few of the girls studied, but most of the guys didn't. And I kept getting hundreds. I got 700 or 800 going into, and I got 100 on the first exam. I think they had quarterly exams and weekly quizzes. And everybody started to notice that, you know, who the hell is this guy? He got 100 on all his exams, you know. What's he trying to prove? So I backed off my hundreds, and I, you know, made a mistake every now and then because I didn't want to be known as an honor. But they pick on you, you know, if you were too smart. So I learned how to get along after a while. Mm-hmm. But that was the thing I noticed the most, is the way the students treated other students with nastiness. I mean, there were little cliques that were formed, and you know, this person wasn't as good as that person, and so forth. And I just didn't like that. I didn't see any sense to it.
Were things any different at Cornell?
No, Cornell, well, of course, it's at Cornell, students were all very, very good. Most of them were trying to learn, and I found high school practically a waste of time. I could have learned all that stuff in a short amount of time, and I would have been better off if they would just leave me alone and let me read the books than go to those classes, because the classes were mostly a waste of time. I find that classes in general are not that useful, even though I teach. I tell my students, I say, if you can read the books and do very well without coming to class, and you have a better thing to do, you don't have to come to class. And they all know that. My class enrollment attendance is pretty low sometimes.
It's interesting that you've decided to teach, and you do have different philosophy than quite a few other professors at this university.
All my upper level and graduate courses, I allow total freedom in what they want to do within reasonable range of the topic. I mean, it has to be something close to the topic of the course, but I allow them independent study work, a variety of things that they can do. I do lecture because it's required, and lecture can be part of what they do too. the large enrollment classes are pretty much restricted to lectures. And I give papers and things like that too.
Now, with
Yeah, go ahead.
such a concept of freedom in your background and in your teaching style, how did you ever end up joining the Air Force? What motivated you? How did you handle training that's much different, that's so regimented?
When I was a little boy, there was an airport near my house. It was about 1.5 miles away, and I used to go watch them take off and land, and couldn't figure out why these pieces of metal would fly. So I was always intrigued about flying. When I got it to Cornell,